Why does a man have to bow to another just because of the color of his skin? That was the question Elijah Carter didn't know how to ask yet, but he felt it deep in his chest, burning like Alabama heat. He was 12 years old when he stopped being a boy in this country and started being a problem. Welcome to Injustice Black. I'm Garrison, and this is where we speak the truth out loud, no matter how heavy it gets. If you believe some stories are worth being heard, subscribe and tell us how this made you feel in the comments. Because the silence around injustice, that's how it survives. Elijah was born in 1948 on a dirt road outside Montgomery. His daddy, Samuel Carter, worked the rail yards, came home with grease on his knuckles and silence in his throat. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice, but also never raised his eyes around white folks. Elijah didn't understand. Why not yet? He remembered walking with his father downtown. They'd be talking, joking even, until a white man walked toward them. That's when Samuel would stop mid-sentence, step off the sidewalk, and lower his head like the ground deserved his attention more than his own dignity. Elijah hated that. Hated the quiet way his daddy disappeared in front of him, his mother. Dolores carried fear in her hands like she was born with it. If sirens screamed through the neighborhood, she'd grab the curtain and peek out with just one eye. Stay inside, she'd whisper, like danger could slip through the cracks in the walls. Elijah didn't ask why. He just sat down, stayed, quiet, and listened to her hum the same gospel hymn over and over again, as if her voice alone could hold back the world. But it was a hot Tuesday in July when Elijah learned what being black in Montgomery really meant. He had 20 cents in his pocket, earned by hauling watermelons down the road, and all he wanted was a Baby Ruth bar from Mr. Langston's store. He walked in, smiled, nodded polite, just like his mama taught him, picked up the candy, put the coins on the counter. Mr. Langston, a white man with yellow teeth and a breath that smelled like bourbon, looked down at the coins, then looked up at Elijah. You trying to be slick, boy? He said. Elijah froze. You put that in your pocket when I wasn't looking, didn't you? No, sir, Elijah said, voice shaking. Mr. Langston grabbed his wrist so hard it left. A mark. You think I can't see a thief just 'cause he smiles at me? Within minutes, the cops were there. 2 white men in thick uniforms, heavy belts clinking. They didn't ask questions, didn't let Elijah speak. One of them pushed him down against the hood of the car. A crowd gathered. No one said a word. Dolores showed up screaming. Samuel arrived 2 minutes later and said nothing, just bowed his head. Elijah saw it again, right there, with his son being shoved into the back seat, his father still bent, his spine to keep the peace. The officers drove Elijah to the station, held him for 3 hours. No charges, no apology, just silence when they let him go. On the way home, his mother held his face in her hands, tears rolling, whispering over and over, "You don't get to be wrong. You hear me, baby? You don't ever get to be wrong." That night, Elijah lay in bed, fists clenched, staring at the ceiling. Something changed in him. Not the kind of change you talk about, the kind that settles into your bones. He didn't hate white people, not yet, but he stopped trusting the idea of fairness. He looked out the window, into the trees swaying under the southern sky, and he thought, this country gave me a number before it gave me a name. And that number? It wasn't lucky. Elijah Carter signed. His name on the enlistment line like it was a key, a way out. He wasn't chasing glory. He wasn't waving no flag. He just needed to breathe somewhere where his skin didn't write his story before he had a chance to live it. It was 1966. Draft was hungry, and Vietnam was calling. Some boys ran. Elijah walked right through the front door of the recruitment office. Not because he believed in the war, but because the South had already shown him its kind of violence, and at least out there, the fight would be honest. So he thought. Boot camp was rough, but Elijah didn't mind the pain. He'd grown up swallowing worse. In the army, orders were orders. No one cared if your daddy was a janitor, or if your mama cried behind the curtain when sirens passed. You carried your pack. You fired straight. You didn't fall behind Dot by 19. He was boots down in the jungle. Mosquitoes the size of nickels, mud in his boots for weeks at a time. Men died screaming. Bombs rained like thunder. But in that madness, something strange happened. Elijah found clarity. In Vietnam, death didn't ask if you were black. It didn't pause to judge your last name. The bullets were equal opportunity. He fought hard. Kept his unit alive when they were pinned near Da Nang. Pulled a white lieutenant out of a fire. Got a medal for it, too. Bronze Star. The citation said, "Exceptional bravery under fire." But he didn't feel brave. He felt numb. War changes men, but not always in ways they can explain. Elijah came home in 1971, a little quieter, a little colder, but proud. Proud of surviving. He stepped off that bus and his uniform boots shined. Chest straight, medal tucked in his bag, and thought maybe, just maybe, things would be different. They weren't. Montgomery didn't see a soldier. It saw a black man. He walked into 5 businesses looking for work. One manager asked if he'd served food in the mess hall. Elijah nodded, unsure what the man was getting at. "Good," the man said. "We need a dishwasher." At the bank. They laughed when he asked for a small business loan. "Maybe check with your people," the loan officer said. "There's a colored credit union somewhere off Jackson Street." At the gas station, a white teenager called him boy, as he wiped down his windshield. Elijah stared at him too long, didn't say a word, just looked. That was enough. 2 nights later, a cop pulled him over near Oak Hollow. No ticket, no reason, just lights and questions. "You think that uniform makes you somebody?" The officer sneered. "Still a boy in this town." Then he slammed Elijah's head onto the hood of the squad car. Just like Mr. Langston had years ago. Just like nothing had changed. Elijah didn't fight back. He didn't scream. He just bled quietly onto the white paint of a country that had told him to be brave, then punished him for surviving. He walked home that night, dizzy and shaking. His mother opened the door and gasped, but she didn't cry. She just touched his cheek and said, "I told you, baby. You don't get to be wrong. Not here." That medal never came out of the bag again. For the next year, Elijah stopped saluting the flag. He stopped saying the pledge, not out of hate, but out of honesty. He'd given this country everything it asked, and it handed him nothing back but bruises and a locked door. Still, he didn't break. Elijah Carter didn't know how to break. He found a job cleaning floors at the courthouse downtown. Minimum wage, night shifts, no benefits. But it was steady. It was quiet. And he figured if the system wouldn't see him as a man, he'd become the shadow that watched it. That was the moment it started. Not the war, not Vietnam. Right there, in those halls. In that silence. When the uniform came off, and the real battle began. Elijah Carter knew how to be invisible. That was the first thing Montgomery ever taught him. But what the city didn't know was that sometimes silence is just another way to scream. He worked the night shift at the county courthouse, graveyard hours. No one around but echoes and shadows. Every night he'd clock in, grab his mop, and push water over the same scuffed floors where judges signed names into prisons and mothers wept outside closed doors. He wasn't part of their world, not really. He was background, an afterthought. And that's exactly how he wanted it. The first time he really saw it was a Tuesday, A white boy barely 17 caught with 2 bags of powder and a pistol in his glove box. Judge laughed it off. Youth makes mistakes, he said. Gave him probation. Sent him home with his daddy and a slap on the wrist. 2 days later, a black boy 16 stood in the same spot. No weapon, just a stolen stereo. He cried. His mama cried harder. Judge didn't flinch. 5 years, no parole. Case closed. Elijah stood behind the courtroom doors, mop in hand, and didn't blink. He saw it again and again. Different faces. Same story. White boys got warnings. Black boys got time. Over and over, like clockwork. And no one questioned it, because to question it meant seeing it. But Elijah saw a dot, so he started remembering names. Scribbling them in a little book he kept tucked deep in his locker. Names, dates, charges, sentences. Then he noticed the clerk's office was sloppy. Left files out overnight. Case folders stacked like junk mail. That's when the rebellion began. He started making copies. Just a few, 1 or 2 at a time. Slipped them in his coat when no one was looking. Back at home, he filed them in an old army chest beneath his bed. The same box that once held his uniform now held the truth. Months turned into years. Elijah read everything. Motions, transcripts, police reports. He learned how the system worked not by protest, but by pattern. He could spot a setup from a sentence. See a biased ruling by the way a judge phrased his doubts. He kept quiet. Always quiet during the day. He was just the janitor. "Hey, Eli," they'd say. "Mind grabbing that spill? Make sure the courtroom's clean for Judge Hampton." No one asked what he thought. No one cared what he saw, which was their mistake, because Elijah saw everything. He watched officers plant fear into boys too, young to shave. Watched lawyers tell tired mothers they had no options. He saw how public defenders took deals just to keep the wheels turning. He noticed how white jurors leaned back while black ones leaned forward, as if they had to work harder just to be heard. He didn't tell a soul, not even his mother. She was older now, frail, tired. He didn't want to worry her. And he wasn't. Sure, she'd believe it would matter. But Elijah had a plan. A long one, a slow one, built brick by brick in silence. Because fighting fire with fire would only burn him alive. He needed proof. He needed patterns. And most of all, he needed patience. Every mop stroke across that courtroom floor was a quiet rebellion. Every page he copied, every name he wrote down. Every late night he stayed long after the building emptied. That was his resistance. His way of saying, "You will not bury us in silence." He was done asking for justice. He was going to show it. It was a Thursday night when Elijah finally let go of the folder. The courthouse was quiet, like always. That kind of dead silence that seeps into your bones if you let it. He stood in the basement storage room, light flickering above him, his hands trembling just a little. Not from fear, from weight. From everything that folder carried. It wasn't thick, just 63 pages, but every word bled. Case numbers, docket sheets, sentencing logs, names he'd memorized, judges he'd watched twist laws into ropes. He'd spent years stacking these pages, building a wall no one could ignore. And now it was time. He slipped the folder into a manila envelope. No return address. Just 2 words printed in block letters across the top. Look close. He didn't sign it. He never would. Elijah waited till after midnight. He knew her car, Marissa Gray, local reporter, young, smart, stubborn, the kind that still believed truth could mean something. She'd been writing pieces about overcrowded jails and bail reform. Nothing too dangerous yet. But she was hungry. He left the envelope on the hood of her beat-up Honda, wedged under the wiper so the wind wouldn't steal it. Then he walked back to the courthouse, clocked out, went home. Didn't say a word. The next morning, the fire started at first. It was just a whisper. Anonymous documents suggest judicial bias. That's how the article began. But then Marissa kept going. She cross-referenced everything. Dug through court logs, talked to families, pulled transcripts. Her newsroom gave her 2 weeks. She only needed 1 dot by the end of the month. Her expose broke the front page. Systemic sentencing disparities in Montgomery courts. Names were printed, graphs shown. The numbers were clear as daylight. Black defendants were 5 times more likely to receive harsher sentences for the same crimes as white ones. Probation for some, prison for others. It shook the courthouse. One judge stepped down. Another blamed clerical inconsistencies. A public defender lost his license after it came out he'd been pleading out black clients without even reviewing their cases. The DA's office issued a statement, but it said nothing. Just smoke and dust. No one asked about the janitor. Elijah watched the whole storm unfold from his usual place behind a mop bucket. People buzzed in the halls, papers flying, reporters lingering by the entrance. And him? Still there. Same uniform. Same floor. But everything felt different. He passed by Judge Hampton one night. The man looked right through him. Didn't nod. Didn't speak. Just looked tired. Like something had cracked behind his eyes. Elijah kept walking. He never told anyone. Not his mother. Not the other janitor. Not even the mirror. It wasn't about credit. It was about truth. It was about the boys like him who never got a second chance. About the ones who didn't come home from prison. Or war. Or traffic stops. Some ghosts screamed out. Elijah became the kind that whispers. Every system has weak points. A paper trail. A crooked judge. A janitor with a memory like steel. And when you pull the right thread, sometimes the whole thing stutters. He didn't bring it down. He never thought he could. But for one moment, he made it bleed. Elijah Carter died on a Tuesday. There was no siren, no front page headline, no great televised goodbye. Just a quiet breath in the night, a soft release, like a man who had finally earned his rest. He passed in the same small house he'd lived in since '78, same creaky porch, same coffee cup on the windowsill. No one came knocking that morning. The world kept turning. At the funeral, there weren't many people. A few neighbors. An old friend from his war days, half blind now, leaning heavy on a cane. Some folks from the church, humming low hymns that carried more weight than words. His mother had passed years earlier. No children, no wife. Just Elijah and the echoes he left behind. But one woman did speak. Marissa Gray stood at the front, hands folded around a single piece of paper. Her voice didn't shake. It carried like it always had, sharp, sure, steady. She told them about a folder, about nights spent poring over documents that no one else had the courage to touch. She told them about the men who resigned, the lawyers disbarred, the laws that had quietly shifted after one story, hit harder than anyone expected. Then she said his name. Elijah Carter was the invisible hammer, she told the room. No spotlight, no applause, just work, quiet work, honest work, the kind that changes more than you think. She stepped down. No cameras rolled. No blue-check voices tweeted his name. But the word stayed. A few months later, the folder, their original one, found its way to a law professor at Howard, then to a curriculum, then into the hands of first-year students who'd grown up hearing whispers about bias, injustice, that feeling in your chest when a cop light hits your rearview mirror and your whole body tightens. One of those students was 17. Black, bright, angry in that way only the truth can make you. He read Elijah's file like it was scripture, studied the patterns, the dates, the steady hand of a janitor who'd mapped injustice like a battlefield. And for the first time, he saw something he'd never seen before. Proof, not pain. Not opinion. Proof. And in that moment, something shifted inside him. Not a roar, just a spark. A seed buried deep beneath years of weight. He didn't know Elijah, never met him. But he could feel him. In the way the words were written. In the quiet fire beneath. Every note. In the fact that someone, somewhere, decided that being invisible didn't mean being powerless. That seed grew. One boy turned into a man. That man turned into a public defender, then a judge. And though the robes changed, the voice stayed the same, because Elijah hadn't cracked the whole wall. He just gave others the courage to keep swinging. That's the thing about legacy. It doesn't always come dressed in medals. It doesn't shout. Sometimes it looks like a mop bucket, a worn folder, a funeral with more silence. Then song. But make no mistake. Elijah cracked the world. And when the world cracks, the light gets in. My name is Garrison. And this is Injustice Black. If Elijah's story stirred something in you, if it made you feel seen, or angry, or ready to do more, subscribe, comment below. Tell me who your Elijah is. Because the quiet ones, the ones they try to forget, they're the ones who move the ground.